Today we are doing lesson 2.2, adding rational numbers, and we're going to be focusing on just adding with decimals. So our can statements for today: I can add rational numbers and I can solve real life problems. Alright, so our key idea here: to add rational numbers, we use the same rules for signs that we use for integers. So just as a reminder, that same sign, find the sum, different signs, find the difference, and we use the sign of the one that we have more of. Okay, so for example 1 here, I have negative 12 and 3/10 plus negative 5 and 4/10. So we're going to start by lining up our decimal points here. Okay. Just like when we were doing integers, if we are adding, when we write them vertically, we want the one with the greater absolute value on top. Okay, so I've lined up my decimal points here. Now I'm ready to add. 3 plus 4 is 7. I'm going to bring down that decimal point straight down. 12 plus 5 is 7. And bring down that 1. I'm adding two negative numbers, so my answer is going to be a negative as well. So my answer for this one is negative 17 and 7/10. Okay, this time I have one with different signs. Remember, different signs, find the difference. I need the one with the greater absolute value, the one you have more of, needs to go on the top when you write it vertically. 7 and 62/100 plus negative 4 and 5/10. This time I have different signs, so I need to find the difference. So even though this is a plus sign, I'm really subtracting with my values. 2 minus 5 is going to take me into the negative, so I need to borrow. So this 6 becomes a 5, and this 2 becomes a 12. 12 minus 5 is 7. 5 minus 0 is 5. 7 minus 4 is 3. And then you go back to the original problem, you see what you have more of, what has greater absolute value. You have more positives than negatives. I have 7, a little more than 7 positives, a little more than 4 negatives. So my answer is going to be positive. So in this one, my answer will be positive 3 and 57/100. Okay, take a moment to pause the video and try these next 3 problems on your own. Okay, let's go ahead and check our answers. So this one, again, bigger absolute value goes on the top. So I'm going to write 15 and 3/10 on the top. Then I'm going to add negative 12 and 5/10. Okay, different signs, find the difference. I'm going to need to do some borrowing here. So I'm going to borrow from the 5. I'm going to make that a 4 and change that 3 into 13. 13 minus 5 is 8. Bring down that decimal point. 4 minus 2 is 2. 1 minus 1 is 0. And then I go back to the original problem. I have more positives than negatives. So my answer is going to be positive. It's going to be positive 2 and 8/10. All right, next one. Negative 8 and 15/100 plus negative 4 and 3/10. This one doesn't have the same amount of place values in both numbers. So when that happens, you want to make sure that you're lining up that decimal point still, and then you add placeholder zeros. So instead of writing negative 4.3, I wrote negative 4.30. That way I have the same amount of place values. Same signs, find the sum. 5 plus 0 is 5. 1 plus 3 is 4. Bring down that decimal. 8 plus 4 is 12. I'm adding two negative numbers, so my answer is also going to be negative 12 and 45/100. And then number 3, 65/100 plus negative 2 and 75/100. Make sure the greater absolute value gets written on the top. negative 2 and 75 hundredths plus 65 hundredths. Make sure you're lining up that decimal points. This one has different signs, so we're finding the difference. 5 minus 5 is 0. 7 minus 6 is 1. Bring that decimal straight down. 2 minus 0 is 2. More negatives. Answer's negative. All right, let's take a look at a story problem. It says this table shows the annual profits in billions of dollars of a financial company from 2008 to 2012. Positive numbers represent gains, negative numbers represent losses. Write a statement to describe the profit over the 5-year period. Okay, so we need to write a statement, which really means sentence, write a sentence, to describe how much the profit is. And it could be a positive amount of profit or it could be a negative amount of profit. All right, so we're going to start by just adding these numbers together. Now, this is very similar to one that we did in our last chapter, and it does help to look for additive inverses. I noticed some right here. 1 and 7/10 and the negative 1 and 7/10. They're going to cancel each other out. So I'm going to start by writing my problem, but I'm going to use commutative property to write the inverses next to each other. So negative 1 and 7/10 plus 1 and 7/10 plus 4, ooh, that's a negative 4, and 75 hundredths plus 85 hundredths plus 3 and 6/10. Okay, you might have noticed I wrote it out horizontally like we saw in our problems in the last section. Since we've got so many numbers, we can only look at 2 at a time anyway. 1 and 7/10 plus 1 and 7/10, those are inverses, they equal 0. So I'm now going to move over to these numbers. I can do my positives together first and then my negative, or I could do left to right. I think I will do my positives and then my negatives. So I'm going to add these two, and I'm going to rewrite the work off to the side here. So let's see, I'll do it down here. 3.60. Don't forget to add placeholders when you have different amounts of decimal places. And 85 hundredths. Okay, same signs, find the sum. 0 plus 5 is 5. 6 plus 8 is 14. Bring down that decimal, carry the 1. 1 plus 3 plus 0 is 4. Now I'm ready to go back to my original problem. Negative 4 and 75 hundredths plus a positive 4 and 45 hundredths. All right, now I have different signs. Find the difference. Again, I'm going to rewrite it off to the side and line up those decimal points. 4 and 75 hundredths plus 4 and 45 hundredths. Okay, 5 plus 5 is, oops, sorry, we are adding, but different signs, find the difference. 5 minus 5 is 0. 7 minus 4 is 3. Bring down that decimal. 4 minus 4 is 0. I have more negatives. Answer is going to be negative. So that's my answer. They asked me to write a statement, so I'm going to write it in a sentence. All right, so the company had negative 30 hundredths billion dollars. In profit. I could have also said the company lost 30 hundredths billion dollars. I could have written it that way as well. Okay. And our last one, in 2013, profit is $1.07 billion. State the company's gain or loss over the 6-year period in billions of dollars. So after our last problem, our total was 30 hundredths, negative 30. So they're asking you to do this, negative 30 hundredths plus that $1.07 billion. Okay, pause the video and try this one on your own. Okay, let's go ahead and check our answer. So I'm going to rewrite my problem. Number with the larger absolute value goes on top. And I need to make sure that I'm lining up those decimal points. I have different signs, so I'm going to find the difference. 7 minus 0 is 7. Can't do 0 minus 3 without going into the negative, so I'm going to have to borrow. That becomes a 0. This becomes a 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. Bring down that decimal. Bring down the 0. Okay, so $77 billion is going to be our final answer.